Good evening and good afternoon to all our viewers across the world. The panel discussion today is on the subject of growing women harassment in India and the need of effective policies. We have three very eminent personalities as our panelists today, and I shall introduce them to you one by one. Brinda Adige is an extremely passionate women's rights activist, development consultant, author, and founder of Global Concerns India. She initiated and pioneered India's first police civil society child protection helpline in 1997 inside the Bangalore Police Commissioner's office, called the Makala Sahaya Vani. She then headed this unit from the date of initiation till 2006. At present, she coordinates programs and efforts related to making cities safer for women, children, and marginalized communities through convergence action. She is supported by the Hans Seidel Foundation under the Karnataka and Bavaria government's Cooperation Pact. NISSMAT is excited to present Brinda as its panelist today.
Thank you.
Dr. VK Singh is a former police officer and the Director General of Police in the state of Uttar Pradesh. He is one of the most highly decorated police officers and features in the Limca Book of Records for his achievements. He is currently the Chancellor of Noida International University. He has authored several books which are available on Amazon, and he's also a TED Talk speaker. Thank you very much, sir, for being on our show today.
Thank you, Mr. Harwani. God bless.
Mr. Sipal Singh is the president of NISSMAT and is one of the most respected senior police officers whose opinion is sought by leading national TV channels. He's an expert in corporate security matters, which includes safety of women in the workplace. Harassment against women is a serious issue in India, and it needs to be addressed effectively. Harassment against women can take many forms, including verbal abuse, physical assault, stalking, and sexual harassment. These acts can be perpetrated by strangers or people known to victims, and they can occur in public or private spaces. Unfortunately, many women in India have experienced harassment at some point in their lives, and some have been subjected to violent crimes like rape and murder. One of the most important steps towards preventing harassment against women is to create awareness amongst the general public about its negative impact. This can be done through various means, such as awareness campaigns, workshops, training programs, and many more ideas that can be generated. Additionally, strict implementation of laws should be put into place to deter potential harassers and to provide a legal recourse for victims. The Indian government has already enacted several laws aimed at preventing harassment against women. These include the protection of women from domestic violence, the sexual harassment of women at workplace, and the Indian Penal Code Amendment Act. However, the implementation of these laws has been lackluster, and more needs to be done to ensure that they are effectively enforced. Despite these efforts, harassment against women remains a pervasive problem in India. One reason for this is that many women are reluctant to report incidents of harassment, either because they fear retaliation or because they feel or believe that nothing will be done to address their problem. Additionally, many employers are not fully compliant with the requirements of the sexual harassment law, and some even discourage women from reporting these incidents of harassment. To address these issues, India needs to develop more effective policies for preventing and responding to harassment against women. This could include measures like increasing the penalties for harassment, strengthening the enforcement of existing laws, and providing better support for victims of harassment. Additionally, employers should be required to provide regular training to their employees on how to prevent and address harassment. and they should be held accountable for any failure to comply with the law. Ultimately, it will take a concerted effort from all levels of society to combat harassment against women in India. This includes not only government officials and employers, but also community leaders, educators, and individuals themselves. By working together and taking a strong stand against harassment, India can create a safer and more equitable society for women. I start by asking my first question. How prevalent is harassment against women in India? And what are the most common forms of harassment that women experience? Mrs. Adige, I start with you.
Thank you very much. The most common forms is domestic violence and gender-based violence of all kinds, both within their homes and out there on the streets, including workplaces. So when we are talking of all of these spaces, the first question that comes to our mind, is there no space that is safe for women? No, there is no space that women can confidently say, I feel safe over here. It could be while traveling in a bus, in a train, in a plane. It could be in their workplaces, and yes, certainly in their homes. But predominantly because we are a patriarchal society, women and men have internalized patriarchy to such an extent that often many women fail to recognize that there is a crime happening on them or against them. There is some form of violence that is happening. And like you pointed out, Mr. Pavan, women till today, even though they may be literate, don't realize that verbal abuse is a kind of violence. Economic abuse is a kind of violence. They assume that control of their finances, control of their movements, control of even the clothes that they wear, which we saw very clearly in the hijab issue, must and should be relegated to men only. And it is not so much of a crime if they don't have a choice over there. So what are the common kinds? All of this. Everywhere. When a woman is told how she should talk, how she should behave, how she should walk, including what she should eat. Because all of that comes under various garbs. It could be rituals. It could be something to do with my religion. It could also be something to do with the kind of caste that I might have been born in, where I am told what I can eat and what I must not eat. So all these various forms of violence, we today do not realize. People put it down to say that this is feminism, but feminism in its 4 waves has come out with all of this to say nothing, no abuse and violence that women suffer, that women are victims and survivors of, can any longer be called personal. All of it is political.
Dr. VIKRAM Singh, you, in your police career, you must have seen several thousands of these cases of harassment against women. Can you just walk us through the experience that you had while dealing with women who have been harassed?
Mr. Ahluwalia, to your first question, I was wondering, is there a single space, a place, a location where the women can feel safe? And I totally agree with the profound words of wisdom of Ms. Brinda Adige, where she said it is difficult to find. Now to talk of the harassment that the women had to face and all varieties. And when I'm saying harassment, it is not just subjected to the labor class, to the lower middle class, to the middle class, to the affluent class. It is difficult to identify a single class, the multi-billionaires down to the BPL. It is difficult to find a single situation the woman has not been harassed. Start with dowry, start with eve teasing, start with stalking, acid attacks. And then the scary situation, Mr. Ahluwalia, is that from the year 2011 to the year 2022, the harassment and the atrocities on women has crossed 87% increase in the crime. What used to be just 228,000 around 2011 now exceeds 428,000 in the year 2022. And when I'm saying that, this presupposes a considerable degree of minimization and non-registration of crime. And then we come to the fact that, yes, a case has been registered, there is harassment. Then we talk of minimization. Ms. Brinda Adige would be I'm sure, aware of the scary situation that when it comes to domestic violence, there has been a study which says 87% cases of the domestic violence cases go unreported. They not only go unreported, but also the women who are the victims are also reluctant to share their trauma and their anguish with their family members, the friends, and what to talk of the police and the law enforcement. In this ecosystem, Mr. Ahluwalia, I feel that it is a tough task, the road ahead and the task at hand. There should be a multi-pronged strategy to address this issue, which I feel seems to be getting out of hand.
Thank you very much. I have another question. What are the primary factors that contribute to harassment against women? And how can we address these underlying issues?
Like I mentioned, patriarchy and misogyny and sexism seem to get internalized. Even women do not realize that the kind of abuse that they might inflict on another woman is part of the language of patriarchy, behavior of patriarchy. And all of this somehow has got into many women that we should not question it, we should not challenge it. Given this kind of a situation, we are looking at what is the available structures to even report any of it. Now, like Mr. VIKRAM mentioned, the first one is our family. But even when we go and talk to our family about domestic violence that might be meted out in the marital homes, it's always said that you need to take care of our respect and prestige. Now, that has become an important concept and aspect that women are forced to uphold. In this situation, where should women go and complain? Where can they go and get any kind of support? There is no support even for listening. At the end of the day, human nature, human psyche is, will somebody listen to me and would somebody believe in me? And maybe some consolation so that the person goes back with either renewed energy or renewed confidence to say, I am happy to or willing to stand up and fight. In this present situation, we don't have any of that. What we might have is a lot of paperwork, is a lot of talk, both by the government, by the justice system, and the various wings of the government. Women have no space that they can call safe, and the home that is supposedly portrayed as the most safe place, is the most belonging place, is also the most unsafe. And in that kind of a situation, women really have nowhere to go. Women really have nowhere to raise these issues or seek any kind of support. So to your question, the answer would be, what is it that is being extended to women as spaces where they can talk about this? Because my society does not even allow women to speak. Continuously, we are told, keep silent. A good woman is that woman who doesn't talk about these issues outside her home. After this, what else can this woman do?
Dr. VIKRAM Singh, lack of education is one of the major causes of the women not being aware of their rights and what they can do. And one of the things that gets reported very often is the women are reluctant to walk into a police station to report a case of harassment. What is your opinion on this?
Mr. Ahluwalia, that reluctance is very, very well justified. After the 13th Criminal Law Amendment Act, after the Nirbhaya case, the amendment of the IPC, the Criminal Procedure Code, and the Evidence Act, a very important section was added, 166A of the Indian Penal Code, action against delinquent and those indifferent police officers who do not react to these crimes against women. I have not had the luxury of seeing a single case of 166A IPC. I do hope Mr. C. Paul has seen a case. You may have seen one, Brinda ji, and I would be pleasantly surprised if there is. Is it to mean that there is total Ram Raj in the country, that there is not a single police officer? I can give you 100 examples where the police have defaulted when it comes to the registration, investigation, and prosecution of these cases, where they have defaulted, yet no action. And this is one reason that we treat these and trivialize these cases. And the police department, I dare say, functions almost like a boys' club, wherein these cases, such cases against women, are given a second grade degree or second status or a substandard status, where they are not prioritized, whereas the topmost priority should have been given to these cases. Then the training to women police officers. Women police officers are, in a very insulting manner in the subculture, are known as police flowers. They are our equal. And I also would like to place on record that they have done much better than women police officers. Take the example of Kiran Bedi, take the example of the UP cadre officer, Kalpana, who has climbed 7 peaks, including the Mount Everest. They have done the commandos courses. But the ground reality is that proper training, proper procedures, and inducting of the latest scientific aids to investigation, they have not been introduced. Women police officers are given a backseat and perhaps a second-class status when it comes to going for foreign courses and other courses. What would you expect, Mr. Ahluwalia? I would say that requires a total overhaul of the policing investigation, starting from registration to investigation to prosecution, and there should be consequences if heinous offenses get acquitted from a court of law, both for the prosecutor and for the police. The end product is that the victim is treated as some kind of a museum specimen and an object of ridicule. Justice Krishna Iyer had said, murder is the destruction of the body, but a rape is the destruction of the body and the soul both. Words of, again, very profound words of wisdom, but I wish we take them seriously and give the topmost importance to crime against women, which just does not seem to be happening anywhere, and therefore the reluctance, justifiably so. When there is indifference, there is ridicule, there is some kind of alienation, these things are bound to happen. There was a talk that we will have women help desk in every police station. I would have been very satisfied if there had been a help desk in every policeman's heart. That would have done and served the purpose much better than having a help desk only by name and by way of cosmetics.
Ms. Brinda, Ms. Brinda, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I would like to compliment to Dr. Vikram's responses. Gender stereotyping is reiterated by the courts and the police and the prosecution when they are applying laws, when they are addressing these cases that come to them. We also see that lawyers and police women, the women lawyers and women police, are treated in a disrespectful manner by the courts themselves. So we are looking at a very patriarchal setup of the structures and its functionaries, which makes it even more difficult when the cases are being argued, when the cases and evidence is being presented. And at that point of time, you can understand the psyche of the expert who is presenting the evidence. Maybe it is the police presenting the evidence through the prosecutor. And if both of them happen to be women, and there is a derogatory statement that may be made or a derogatory remark that is done, they are at conflict to address themselves as persons, as experts, and the evidence at hand, which falls through in court. And this, like Dr. Vikram pointed out, requires an overhauling, which means a complete reformation of the police and the judicial system. Thank you.
What is the kind of support that we can provide to these victims when they are in the police station or when their cases are under progress, under judicial review? What is the kind of support you think is necessary to these women who have been harassed and are victims of harassment?
The district and the state legal services authority already has a scheme for victim protection as well as compensation and witness protection. But this is only on paper. It doesn't get executed in the manner it should because of A, their patriarchal mindsets, B, their lack of training, C, and the lack of resources. If they continue to do this, then there is no way that people will get support. Let us now take a case of a woman in need. The assumption here is that only women belonging to the BPL category can avail of the services of a lawyer at the District Legal Services Authority. Now, who are the lawyers who are empaneled over there? These are lawyers who have just come out of law colleges and who have not associated with themselves with any of the law firms. They are over there, which means they lack experience. They lack the legal support that is required when a case comes up for argument to court. And they require funds, they require money. Now, the Legal Services Authority give a paltry sum of about 250-300 rupees per case against their counterparts who would be charging about 5,000 rupees per case. Given that situation, this woman's case will not come up to court, not come up for hearing till she is extending that kind of money to the person who has been assigned. Now, if I go and complain about this person who has been assigned to me, I am creating bad blood between me as the client and the advocate who has to be arguing on my behalf. So there is no way we can complain. So it is important that those who are empaneled with the State Legal Services Authority are people who are experienced, people who are committed, and people who have a body of work behind them, A. B, every case must be looked at within a specific time-bound manner so that no woman who may not be part of the BPL also can avail of these services, especially when that woman might be thrown out of her family home, a marital home, may not have a job. So she may really not be under the BPL, but right now her situation is that of a woman who is under the BPL. So this is required, 1. 2, the police stations must absolutely network, cooperate, collaborate with the local NGOs in that vicinity or in that jurisdiction. Having counselors who are appointed by the government to sit at the police station, again, downplays the case that has come before them, because the counselors will do everything only in tandem and in line with the police, which means we haven't changed the situation. There is a power play, and the dynamics of power play continues where the woman will still not get her support. There is no collaboration with the counseling agency. There is no collaboration with the shelter organizations, which means somebody else has to ask for all of this, as the woman does not have that support. And the counselors at the police station, at least in Karnataka, are not trained enough for this networking to do the coordination required per case. So the woman suffers again.
What are the consequences of harassment against women, both for the individuals and for society as a whole? Brinda, your comments on it.
One of the major consequences of harassment of women is the life of the woman. At the end of the day, she is going to be silent and she's not going to come up and report. But statistics show today, especially after COVID, that there are more women who are suffering mental illness than people thought it to be. Because it was always assumed that mental illness is not suffered by many people, it is only a small number of them. But just this silence, this not being able to talk about it, this not being able to share this harassment that is happening, either due to family pressures or because of societal pressures, and also probably about work pressures. If somebody gets to know that a woman is in depression, then probably her work is at stake, her employment, her job is at stake. And today we are seeing that there are more women suffering from all of this, which of course later comes up in various forms of their physical ailments. But that apart, we are looking at families that are breaking. We are looking at children who are bearing the consequences of all of this harassment and violence, which begins in the home. We are seeing more children who are also prone to various other forms of violence that they commit on other children. And when they grow older, they have no qualms. If you look at the observation home in Bangalore, I'm sure it might be the same case in other cities and towns also. The highest number of rapes have been committed by minors and young adults on children and other vulnerable women. So the question comes up is, law is not enough. Law by itself on paper is not enough, because we know that these laws do not get executed in letter or spirit by the various arms that are operational to execute the laws. The schemes for preventing either violence against women, children, or for protection of children and women are also not optimally executed because of various reasons, corruption being one of them, people not being trained being the other of it, and a very low staff number statistically being available to execute all of this. So harassment to women is going to be the downfall of our families, our communities, and our nation.
Dr. your thoughts on this particular subject? Consequences of harassment against women.
Mr. Ahluwalia, consequences with a very, very deep sense of anguish and shame, I'm saying that in spite of the Nirbhaya case and the Criminal Law Amendment Act number 13, there have been an increase in the number of registrations, to which we claim that it is because we have given an ecosystem, an environment of safety to the women, that they feel secure and emboldened to lodge their FIRs. But the other side of the coin is that it is not followed by the number of convictions. To the contrary, the number of convictions has gone down by 28%, not by 1 or 2, but by 28%. If the convictions have gone down, I don't think there is any occasion for us to congratulate ourselves or the prosecution or the investigation. Again, I would say that there should have been consequences. As it is said, bad investigation, worse prosecution, both need to be, but one of the two, either the investigator or the prosecutor, there should have been consequences. I don't know where any consequences has been happening to the casual investigators or the prosecutors. Under these circumstances, you would see that, yes, what there have been, that in UP, there has been a very encouraging increase in the number of convictions. But these oases of excellence need to be replicated all over the country. And the one bottom line has to be certainty of punishment. If there is no certainty of punishment, I'm sure there will be no deterrence. Before the Verma Commission, I had also proposed, it was far too radical at that time, 2013, that chemical castration for gang rapists, child abusers should be made the law, as there is the law in 6 countries in the world. Of course, that was not it, but the certainty of punishment and also the shame of the rapist being castrated, that I would always presume. But as to the consequences, you say, with the large number of acquittals that are happening, the certainty of punishment is a distant dream, and that needs to be set right and rectified.
Brinda ji, there's a lot of stigma and shame that gets associated with a woman when she's been harassed, and when she reports a particular case. How does one overcome these kind of situations?
Like I mentioned, structures are patriarchal. Institutionally, patriarchy gets promoted, reiterated time and again. And if you look at our laws, almost all our laws are very, very patriarchal. We probably need to abolish these laws, beginning with, the Child Marriage Act, which does not want to take a stance on what should be the age when we talk about the Juvenile Justice Act, which is already 18. Then you look at this law against trafficking. The law itself is called Prevention of Immoral Trafficking. If trafficking is a crime as per IPC 370, how can this crime be moral or immoral? There cannot be any kind of moral trafficking. So I'm just giving you these laws offhand. They are very patriarchal. So then how do we extend? What is the kind of protection that we must give? We've been talking about it again and again, and also like Dr. Vikram pointed out over there has to be a overhauling. There has to be a complete revamp of the systems. We are talking of all the systems. We are talking of the mode of appointment. We are talking of the mode in the manner in which they look at the cases. That there is law that talks about being time-bound, but nothing happens time-bound. Look at the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. It talks about a 48-hour interim order to be given. To date, no judge across India has ever given an interim order within 48 hours. And that order is for the protection of that woman. And if that kind of a protection cannot be extended, even when the law talks about it, what are we talking about? Who do we hold accountable? We cannot hold the prosecutor accountable. We cannot hold the judge accountable. The colonial mindset continues to be reiterated by people in positions of power who are supposed to extend justice. Given this kind of a situation, we are still waiting for the parliament to enact these amendments to the act. It is a possibility that can be done by progressive people sitting in these positions to interpret the law in the manner that upholds human rights of every person that comes before them. But these human rights, child rights, women's rights, and rights of people coming before them as victims and survivors of violence is never upheld. So we don't hold them accountable. Cases go on, and they are so tedious and cumbersome and expensive that no case sees the light of justice in the real sense. So often, nearly 65 to 69% of the cases are happy with procedural justice. No substantive justice is extended to them. So when we are looking at women and cases of women, we want to ask, what is it that people want to look at as justice? Where is it that this woman can get justice? Can she get justice in her gurdwara, or in her church, in her mosque, or in her temple? Or if not all of this, in her community? And if the community cannot extend that justice, we have now come to our courts. If the courts continue to harass her, where can she go? Where must she go? And she is always burdened with society and what society wants her to do. And she's also burdened with the upkeep of her children and probably sometimes her aged parents and her in-laws. In this kind of a situation, a question that you have asked just now has too many answers, which somebody might say is a feminist answer or a radical feminist answer.
So, Sipal,
Yes.
how can we create a culture of respect and gender equality? And what role can men play in preventing harassment against women?
You see, violence against women is one of the world's most prevalent human rights violation, which has serious short and long-term physical, economic, and psychological consequences on the women. I have been asked as to how can men contribute to check this harassment. The parent in particular, the members, the male members in the Indian family should bring equality amongst the children, that is the sons and daughters, by giving up the notion and by giving up their mindset of patriarchal society. Number two, by providing education to men on healthy gender relationship. The education should be on how healthy gender relationship should be considered by the son, right from the school level. Three, men should themselves play a very positive role by forcefully speaking against harassment, stalking, indecent gestures by anyone when they witness this sort of action somewhere. Fourth, the men should condemn perpetrators and perpetration of women harassment. They should help to ensure women are treated with dignity in process of reports to be lodged with the police station. They should be treated with dignity during the investigation by the police. they should be treated with dignity during the judicial proceedings in the courts. The men should help the women to ensure all this. Further, the objectification of women and deteriorating moral values have indeed caused anxiety not only to the social activists, but all saner elements of the society. Thus, I have a feeling that there is a need to challenge the prevailing belief of masculinity, which emphasizes on strength and aggression. That is how the men can contribute towards this cause of objecting to the harassment of the women.
Mr. Sipal Singh, Mr. Sipal Singh, I'd like to stop you here, and I'd like Mr. VIKRAM Singh to jump in. How can you create a culture of respect and gender equality? And what role can men play in preventing harassment against women? After all, maybe a patriarchal system or whatever, but there is a role that we can play to reduce it. And unless we sort of do it, the atrocities will continue. So what, in your opinion, is the role that the men should be involved in, and how do we create a system where gender equality is more coming forth in society?
Mr. Ahluwalia, it is not that us or somebody like me, a lesser mortal, is speaking about this important subject. No other than the Honorable Prime Minister said this. Your sentiments and our sentiments from the Red Fort maybe about 4 years ago, that yes, once and for all, we need to train our boys to be gentlemen, but we have failed miserably, not only the nation, but the Prime Minister also. Repetition, internalization, and then it becomes habit. The parents have to realize, as Mr. Sipal Singh had said, that the different sets of rules for girl child and different sets of rules for the boy child. This anachronism has to go once and for all. And let me tell you, the increase, my generation, Mr. Sipal generation, rest assured, if we were found doing something dishonorable, the father used to talk very little, but the mother, we would be after us, and there would be no mercy shown to the boy if the act was dishonorable, even to the extent that when the boy turned 16, the mother had a 5-minute interview with the boys. In most of the middle-class families, that, look, if you go to a police station in charge of eve teasing, your father is not going to bail you out. And again, there'll be consequences after you come out on bail, after the incident, that you'll be disowned from the family assets. And the wording of the advertisement that will be given to the local press would be, VIKRAM Singh, son of Thakur Markandeya Singh, has got into bad company and is disowned from all family legacy and assets. As simple as that. This level of warning perhaps is totally lacking. I have not heard this kind of zero tolerance attitude by the parents and the teachers. We were in the schools, and the Jesuit brothers were as unsparing as my parents. And they said the 3 ingredients of good schooling were caning, cold bath, and bad food. Of course, this again is totally unacceptable today. But it used to work very efficiently because there was a system of zero tolerance when it came to teasing or writing obnoxious things or graffiti. Therefore, I would say that the parents and the teachers need to take a relook how they handle eve teasing. It is not a tamasha. It is not fun. It is just not something to be very happy about. Therefore, the teachers, the schools, every stakeholder of society, the parents will have to chip in and put their best foot forward to ensure that there is zero tolerance within the office, the confines. I'll give you a real life example. Sending good morning and good night messages to a lady colleague. Do you think it is not harassment? Certainly it is harassment. And when the committee prevention of sexual harassment at workplaces came, it does not amount to harassment. To which I disagreed and said, how many times have you sent good morning and good night messages in the last 12 months to your parents? Not once. And if you choose, like a scud missile, to send good morning and good night messages to your woman colleague, I think there is more of perversion than politeness in whatever you are doing. And therefore, you will be taken to task for punishment for a misdemeanor that is totally unacceptable in an organization. I wonder if you would agree with that, but I feel that I have no qualms on my conscience that I took the right decision.
As pointed out by the moderator, of the session right in his introduction. There are a number of laws, number of policies, and number of rights given to the women as far as legal matter is concerned, as our legal values is concerned. The prevailing laws and policies relating to violence against women in India are, number one, the constitutional rights, the fundamental rights that all citizens of India, including all women, have a fundamental right to live in peace. They have a fundamental right to live in harmony. The right to equality and the right to constitutional remedies also indirectly clarifies that women cannot be harassed just by virtue of their gender. Then there are directive principles of the Constitution. Though these directive principles are not enforceable in the court, yet if they are elaborated, if they are practiced, then this basic principle relating to social, economic, and legal values, as well as legal justice to be given to women, can go a long way to check the harassment. Then there are fundamental duties. The Constitution also provides fundamental duties. Unfortunately, the legal action for non-compliance of these fundamental duties has not been enacted elaborately. If the fundamental duties are complied with, or in case of non-compliance of the fundamental duties, there are some legal provision, then probably a neighbor or an onlooker seeing a woman being harassed will have to come into play, will have to perform his role. Therefore, I have a feeling that though we are considering at length as to what should be the way out, we have said the enforcement of laws should be made stricter, the laws should be made stricter, more laws to be made. I have a feeling that fundamental duties in the Constitution, some of the fundamental duties should be made into legal offenses, that if they are not performed, that the legal action can be taken against the person concerned. Probably this will go a long way in improving the plight of the women, and women being harassed, and people are just onlookers or onlookers, that's all. They are not bothered the women is being harassed or being dragged in a car or being mutilated and brutalized, because there's no justification. There's no legal right that they should always, this will not interfere. If you make the fundamental duties, some of them as legal offenses, if they do not perform these fundamental duties, probably it can go a long way to check the harassment and improve the lot of the women. In the spirit of humanism also, there should be some, these fundamental duties for others should provide a safeguard for women from such sexual harassment by rowdies and by unwanted elements of society. Though for the spirit of humanism is one, but once you put it as a legal ban, and if they do not know the legal action against them, then it will become probably more authentic. So I feel that fundamental rights and fundamental duties should be made more elaborate and should at places made legally legal offenses. There are other legal remedies also provided in the Indian laws. For example, IPC and CRPC have provisions to punish assaults and criminal force. The need of availability of the police officers for recording the statement, etc., that is a definite matter, but legal remedies are there. Then, for example, Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code deals with cruelty and harassment of married women. There are also provisions in the Indian Penal Code which lays down the accountability of the public servant who are connected with the implementation of or enforcement of the are checking the violation of women's dignity. For example, Section 326A, 326B, 354, etc., as well as Section 509, holds public servants who are concerned with implementation of the laws accountable. Then, besides that, there are a large number of enactments like protection of women from domestic violence, sexual harassment of women at workplace, and there are other indecent representation of women, etc. But unfortunately, the policies of enforcement, the available sections of Indian Penal Code, the general principle of the constitutions are not being implemented to the extent they should be, with the result that there is a growing violence against the women in general and particularly in India. In India, the National Crime Bureau had lately reported that the violence at one stage has gone 200 times against women. So it needs to be in a need of great concern, in a need of great anxiety for our women activists and the social activists.
Brinda ji, to sort of jump in on this, what is your expectation that the men should be doing to prevent sexual harassment?
Okay, I will also
What is the role?
answer
What
to
is
the
the
previous.
Yes. What is the role that you would expect the men to be doing for prevention of this kind of an activity?
First and foremost, we also have to include media, religious heads, and politicians to be part of this entire education and revamping of their mindsets. We cannot absolve these people of that because they are also role models somewhere along the line. And these role models have a responsibility. What do we want the men to do? Again, education. And I would like to reiterate over here, patriarchy, proponents of patriarchy are more women than men because the men complete their job and they go away. But women reiterate it on a daily basis. And so it has to be both men and women who relearn, unlearn what they have learned as patriarchy and misogyny and relearn through education what is it that requires to extend this dignified, respectful interactions and speech with everybody. If you look at the kind of language that we use, our language is also very patriarchal. How we want to scold people, especially in our regional languages, all the regional languages, all the slur words are feminine in nature. And that is why it is important that both men and women understand that they have to unlearn all of this patriarchy that we have internalized for so many years. And we get bombarded with this. It's an onslaught of patriarchy from various sectors, especially the media and our politicians. And yes, we cannot absolve the religious leaders also who might interpret the books in a manner that is patriarchal. So this is required, which means this education, like Dr. Vikram pointed out and Mr. Paul pointed out, must begin with our schools, in our homes, and at the community centers, whatever may be the functions that we might be having, all of this, every level and at every stage. Nobody can say somebody is too small or somebody is too old, and so we can't talk about it. So we would like the men to understand that this patriarchy is detrimental to them also. It expects men to be this macho person who must not cry, which is not correct. Emotions are emotions for everybody. Sorrow, depression, whatever it might be, are emotions. And if men want to cry, let them. Because you see now the highest number of suicides are by men, and that is also because they are not allowed to talk about their feelings and their emotions. 1. 2, it is time for our schools and our colleges not only to have all of these science and English and math and social studies, but to give time for personality enhancement, sessions and classes on personality enhancement and moral education. which we are totally lacking today. None of the schools have taken this up seriously. It is time for us to take it up, not on just religious grounds, but moral. The moral values from all religions must be inculcated to children. And that should be our responsibility. And let's also hold our politicians to that moral value.
Let me just ask another simple thing. What is the advice that you would give to the women that they should do to protect themselves from harassment?
First and foremost, let every woman who's listening just now remember that you and I are as beautiful as we think ourselves to be. Do not let advertisements and do not let anybody around you tell you otherwise. Because women are constantly being told how you should dress, how you should be, what you should wear, why you're not looking good, what shampoo you must use, what cream you must use. Don't allow anybody to dictate terms of beauty to you. Remember, you and I are as beautiful as we choose to be. Given that situation, also remember that we are each very, very strong. We've been brought up as good human beings by our parents, by our families. Don't allow anybody to belittle you. Don't allow anybody to tell you that you are anything less than what you have been brought up to be and what you consider yourself to be. It's not just the academic qualifications, but every value that our parents have taught us, every value that our elders have put into us and told us that you are this and you can accomplish and achieve whatever you want to be. Never doubt yourself on that. Thirdly,
Sorry.
one more, yeah. Talk about everything that you might be experiencing in your home, which makes you feel vulnerable, which makes you feel small, which makes you feel as if you're not a complete human being. As a woman, you're a complete human being, irrespective of whether you deliver a baby or you don't, and more so whether you deliver a girl baby or a boy baby, because biologically, scientifically, it is the man who is responsible for that boy baby, not the woman.
I would like, first of all, to categorize various types of violence against some women. Domestic violence, which includes physical violence also, sexual violence also, and emotional violence also. Then, of course, there is the economic violence, making women financially dependent by keeping a total control over financial resources. The psychological violence, causing fear by intimidation, by threatening, by causing physical harm to near and dear ones of the women, is another violence which is impinged on the women. Then there is emotional violence, that is undermining the sense of self-respect by constant criticism, by name calling to the women, by verbal abuse, and by not allowing his partner to see her relatives, friends, and family members. This is emotional violence. Then, of course, there is the sexual violence, that is force on your partner without her consent. There's a need, I think, to challenge the prevailing beliefs on masculinity itself. Evidence has shown that traditional concepts of masculinity, which emphasize harassment, using the trait of your aggression or your physical strength against women, needs to be challenged. Besides, women organizations around the world need to strengthen themselves. Strong laws, of course, are also required, and more than the strong law, the implementation of these laws is more important. Workplace sexual harassment, which is well recognized these days, also needs to be checked. I have a feeling that if all these measures are taken together, probably there will be check as far as the harassment to the women is concerned. But when I am talking about India, I feel that workplace harassment also has been going in other parts of the country, in other parts of the world. When Me Too movement started some time back, Australia was given the first place that they were the one who were top in the Me Too movement. That is, they were harassing their women on workplace. Unfortunately, against only one story of such harassment, there are 99 such stories which are not disclosed. Therefore, you cannot have a data as to which country is the first and which country is the second. But this workplace violence has been going on almost in all the countries of the world till Me Too movement started. Thank you.
Days back, I was asked this question, and I spontaneously I said, stay alert in public places, especially go out at night where you feel there are safe areas and there are unsafe areas in every city. So if you can understand, if you feel unsafe, just walk away from there. Some of these small tips that you can give to the women at the workplace or in your homes,
Yes.
they can carry a long way to safety. Dr.
Yes,
VIKRAM Singh, would you
I
like
was
to
just
share
coming
some
to-
of the, let me just ask
So-
Dr. VIKRAM Singh.
I just want to share this bit.
Okay.
Trust your intuition and your feeling. When you feel that there is a situation, whether it is with your best friend or with a lesser known acquaintance, a feeling that is bringing some kind of uncomfortableness or fear, walk away from that space, because your intuition is your strongest defense. You do not have to rationalize to say, how am I going to hit back? How am I going to run? Remember that intuition is your sixth sense. Move away from there. There is no, even if you're a karate expert, there is no need to put yourself into a difficult situation and then battle that out. All the time when you're going out, maybe for a drink, maybe to the pub, maybe for a walk, inform your closest friends. I will be out here. Send a message. I will be going out here. That does not mean that you have to have the secrecy is taken away, but your confidentiality has to be maintained by those people, and they also know where you are so that support can be extended to you. And if for some reason something has happened, don't be afraid to call out loudly, no matter where you are. It doesn't matter what people think of you. Your safety, your life is the most precious thing at that moment.
Dr. VIKRAM Singh, the police had put across certain apps where you can ask for help and things so on. So how effective have they been in our society?
I think they have been reasonably successful, and it's a good idea to have those apps, but have a dry rehearsal to see that when you really need the app to function, then they become dysfunctional. The help does not seem to be coming. And there also has been a 30%, I feel, a disappointment in the use of these apps. Therefore, they have to be honed, they have to be fine-tuned, they have to be upgraded also. And therefore, I would say these apps are of great use, but yes, they need to be improved as well. And the police responsible, the bottom line being that the police responsible also has to be infallible, absolutely fail-proof and foolproof, which is not the reality.
I have one more question that I was, on my mind. What are the barriers that prevent women from reporting harassment? We discussed, the attitude of the police officers and so on, and the social stigma that is there. What else, the women should keep in mind as to how they need to get strong, and how do you make them stronger on the harassment issue? They need to go and report, and how do we make them strong to be able to go and report?
If the women come out to report to a police station, if I may say, or probably call 112 as a last resort. So the person who's responding to that call must be ultra sensitive. We find that these people are not sensitive. They are only very, very bothered about recording the call. Where are you calling from? Which is your area? how does somebody reach there? What is your Aadhaar number? We have been asked even Aadhaar number by 112 people when we call 112. And that must be immaterial in this day and age of digital India, because when we call, most of us call from the mobile phone, which means my number is already flashing on your screen. You don't need that number. You don't need my whereabouts of, what is my Aadhaar number or what is my address. So the sensitivity of the person responding to that emergency call is utmost. The experience of the person, the way you speak to that person who's calling for help, you want to establish that confidence, saying, you've called to the right place. Please tell me how I can be of help. Is there anybody else next to you who can stand by your side? Would you want to drink a glass of water or hold on to something strong, some place? Because all of this is rarely given. And we find that after 40 seconds, the person cannot speak anymore. So this is what is required. Trained, experienced, sensitive professionals at the end of a helpline. If that helpline is not reachable, and if the person has managed to reach a police station, then you need the same trained, professional, sensitive person sitting in that police station to take these calls, to respond to this person. Thirdly, we are looking at speedy disposal of cases. If a case is filed, even in the family court, it takes nothing less than 8 to 12 weeks for the first hearing, which means the first article of 48 hours interim order is already lost. Nobody gets an interim order over there. So we're looking at speedy disposal. I'm hoping that the government would start looking at mobile courts for certain cases of this nature, like the ones that are happening in Tamil Nadu, because there you can go to a mobile court which is in a jurisdiction over there, make your case, which means there is a speedy disposal at the most within 48 hours. So the court, government must start looking at something like that.
What are the reporting options available to a woman on harassment? Dr. VIKRAM Singh?
Yes, Pawanji, the first is 112. Then there's online complaints in most of the states now. And then the physical visit to the police station. These are the three options available and seem to be popular. 112 by far the most popular. But as Brinda ji had mentioned, the obnoxious habit of this is call to 112 is an SOS call. There's no time for frivolous details like the Aadhaar number or PAN card number. There's absolutely no requirement also. That is just waste of time and dilatory tactics. Now going physically to the police station, almost 50%, but 112 has become exceedingly popular in the last 3 or 4 years. And I would say that toning the system and perfecting it to become of greater service to those in need is a requirement. And as Brinda ji had said, politeness, empathy, when the victim goes to the police station, just a simple glass of water and polite language. Empathy, that can be the game changer. That again, it may sound very simple and it is easier said than done. We have miles to go indeed before we rest on our laurels, because there's a lot to be done as far as this soft skill is required.
While talking about indecent gestures, but when we talk about objectification of women, when I talk about the Immoral Traffic Act, there are certain acts and certain terms which need more elaborate definition as far as the legal consequences of such offenses is concerned. Obscenity itself has been defined differently. The people who think that this obscenity is just an expression, freedom of expression, they do not think such an objectification of women as an obscenity. In art and literature, for example, and recently we had in our country certain films coming up, it was objected to that they are obscene. They violate the moral values of a particular community or particular place. But the courts, after considering the plea of these filmmakers had cleared these films. So the question was, what is obscenity for a person and what is not an obscenity of the person? How to view obscenity? How to view indecency? That is a one of the basic issues when we come to objectification of women or indecent postures, etc., being depicted in certain TV channels or outside in an art media. That gives a sort of fillip or a way for the police to book the offender and not giving it that much strength as to get it convicted in the court of law. Because they book it under a particular offense. And when you go to the court of law, the offense itself is not so clear. They say this is at one time, at one place, at a particular period of time, a thing may be obscene. But at other time, at another place, another apo, that particular thing may not be obscene. So therefore, when you are dealing with this sort of offenses, where obscenity is concerned, where some legal obscene gestures are concerned, or where objectivity of women are being objectified, etc., the booking under an offense has to be done by a police in a very careful manner, so that they do not get scot-free after the case is filed in the court of law. I have a feeling that all these things have to be changed holistically. I mean, not one thing we emphasize all the time, that the enforcement is not being done. First of all, the offense is committed. Commitment of offense, then it is a question of registration of offense, then it is a question of investigation, then it is a question of prosecution. And we say, no, the police has not done. Okay, there are lacunas, there are defects in our legal system, in our enforcement system, in our criminal justice system. But there are certain other things which are, just like one I mentioned, was that the duties of the citizens, and they should be made certain legal offenses when these duties are not fulfilled. Similarly, another important point is that when we are considering indecent postures, indecent behavior, then I have seen many cases. For example, there's an immoral trafficker. There's a prostitution as such. Prostitution per se is not punishable in the court of law. But prostitution is punishable if in between there's a party who engages that woman and brings her prostitution. Now, it is very difficult to prove in the court of law whether the lady was brought in by a particular offender who charged commission. So therefore, certain things have to be considered from the point of view of difficulties in their legal interpretation. So I feel the entire system, the entire approach has to be systematic and holistic, not only confining itself to the legal laws and all. And the last of it, I feel that the women activists can play a great role, and they should try to intervene and meet the people, meet the ladies and girls who have been violated. Their input to the social activists, and then their activism on this can go a great way in reducing at least checking to some extent, the harassment, growing harassment to the women. Thank you.
Brinda ji, how do you build trust in the justice system where a woman can feel so, she doesn't feel scared of walking in and making a complaint?
Like Dr. Vikram mentioned, that entire mandate of being empathetic, of showing that courtesy, and a language that is sensitive, a language that does not, sit on a high horse of power play. And I would also want to reiterate that there is a requisition for additional representation, increased representation of women in all of these execution arms of operational arms of the departments. whether it is the police, the prosecution, the judiciary, and the other department. There must be an increased number of women over there, and this professional interaction. We lack this professional interaction across our various departments, and that is the right of every citizen.
Another thing that is very prevalent is that you have these NGOs and you have the civil society organizations who are playing a very pivotal role today in preventing harassment against women. What do you think is their role that they should actually be playing and opposed to what they are doing?
That is why in my initial responses, I said there has to be convergence of local organizations working in the jurisdiction of the police station or the court. Because until and unless we have these NGOs that come from a rights-based approach rather than a charity doled-out approach, there will not be this kind of a confidence that can be extended to women, saying that this is your right, you can come and complain and you can avail of the services that are extended to you by the various departments. So NGOs must be part and parcel of the local police station, the court, and the district legal services authority. They have to be having an official mandate within that jurisdiction to work alongside, not just as simply your counselor appointed and all, but that they have a role like in the West. You have, before protective custody is given or taken, there are counselors, social workers who go immediately and they have the right to enter into any house if there is a child or a woman in trouble. That is the kind of support and mandate that must be given to civil society organizations.
Do you remember of any case where the law enforcement has been proactive in preventing harassment? Dr. VIKRAM?
You may well realize that 72% of acid attack victims are women. And acid attack has assumed epidemic proportions in 3 areas: Delhi, West Bengal, and Uttar Pradesh. And there are pockets in Uttar Pradesh. So what we did is the acid attack before the Nirbhaya thing came and the 13th criminal law amendment came. So we had to resort only to very minor crimes, and the person who was the attacker came out scot-free. So what we decided that every case of acid attack would be taken up under provision of section 307, attempt to commit murder. Since public order is vitiated, then National Security Act subclause 1 vitiating public order. Then also other sections of the law were incorporated. The person throwing the acid, that was the last time he threw acid ever, because he was incarcerated within the confines of the jail for almost 10 years plus. And these things were so deterrent that, in fact, I have the satisfaction of saying, where there is a will, there is a way, that there were no acid attacks for the next 2 years almost in the whole of Uttar Pradesh, because the punishment was a certainty and they were taken up in the topmost priority. And therefore, the identification that if you throw an acid, well, that will be the last time that you'll see the freedom outside the jails. And that person, many of them continue to be jailed even today, even after 12 or 13 years. That is what they putting them in the fast track court, pursuing them vigorously, putting up prosecutors of eminence and merit, and ensuring almost 100% convictions. Therefore, I would say, identify the criminals, identify the crime, identify the weak areas of administration, and address them. It is perfectly doable, Mr. Ahluwalia.
One of the ways to reduce harassment for women is to have women in positions of leadership, to have women in positions in the government where their position they can be seen and they can impact and enforce policies. What is your opinion on this subject, Brinda ji?
I'm in complete agreement that there should be more women in formulating policies and making decisions, especially with regard to women, because we do not really accept that men know everything or men understand everything and they should make policies. And that is why it is important that women come into positions of power. And the reservation in the parliament is a fight that has been going on. But we also know that even though we have a law that there should be women in the local panchayat bodies, it is men who control all of those decisions. So consciously, there has to be education extended to women to understand that they are people worth of themselves. And that must also come again with education, which we are saying from the families and in the schools. But that apart, it is time that cases that come before the court are speedily disposed of. Often the acquittal rates are so high, and for very, very flimsy reasons, which is all boxed under procedural areas. So the procedural area is then left up to a separate compartment called the police. I had an opportunity to go to Munich, and we found that the judge, the prosecutor, and the police sit together to discuss cases, especially of cases related to women and violence against women and children, to see how to proceed with the case, how to get evidence, how to gather all of that evidence.
That's it.
Present it in a manner that will hold water, which means as per the legal system, it is not that they are conniving with each other, but each one is being the devil's advocate, asking, can this hold water in court? What else can you do? Instead of fighting with each other. Right now, police do not want to take suo motu cases. Why do they not want to take it? Because those suo motu actions are not respected in court. And why would you not want to respect it? It was a earlier colonial era where the police was considered a separate wing and an arm. And so you didn't want to believe in the police's statement that is taken at the police station. You revamp that. Revamp it to say that the woman does not have to repeat herself 40 times just because she has made a statement once before somebody. 164 statement, how often is it done immediately? It takes weeks and weeks before it comes. And we know human frailty. Memory fades as the time goes of all traumatic events. So by the time she's brought before the judge, she would have forgotten a lot of nuances of what she had experienced. And that itself might bring the case down. So it is important that we bring in these systems that converge for the justice of that crime that has been committed, rather than each one saying that you are not doing something, you are not doing something. Because right now, I do a lot of facilitation of training programs with prosecutors, police, and judges, and each one only blames the other person. And when we sit together and we ask and say, oh, the law doesn't permit me to work with you. So it's now come to the parliamentarians and our policy makers. So it is the parliamentarians that must be given an education, and they must decide and sit down how to revamp the systems, reform the judiciary, the police, and the prosecution, and abolish all the patriarchal laws so that laws are read with human rights in mind and justice as the end result.
Brinda, your last comments on the subject.
I think we should ask Mr. Vikram and then I will talk, sir.
All right.
With your permission, with your permission, please, I would say that the total system requires a total overhaul. There cannot be quick fix solutions to anything. Like terminal cancer, you have to try everything, starting from homeopathy to Chyawanprash, right up to all the surgical interventions, as also prayers. But yes, every tool in the arsenal of the law enforcement and all the stakeholders have to chip in to ensure that we have breathing space for our women. Thank you.
Brinda, your last comments.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, sir, it is pertinent that we have intra-departmental and interdepartmental convergence and collaboration, and beginning with the revamp of the systems that are supposed to execute and put into operation the laws that we currently have. Of course, the laws need to also be amended, but currently what we have, if we want to work on it, we need to have this very, very clearly mandated. If there is going to be only convergence with the civil society organizations and all the other departments from a rights-based approach, will we be able to extend some semblance of justice to women. Thank you.
Dr. VIKRAM Singh and Brinda ji and Mr. Sipal Singh, thank you very much for your participation in this very, very important panel discussion subject. And to all our viewers, I'd like you to sort of, when you are seeing this, watching this video, please like and subscribe this particular video. Thank you very much, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.